Are we on? We are on, right? Okay, well, good morning. Buenos dias and welcome. Bienvenido. Glad to have you all here. We have some folks, we are broadcasting this live, so there are some folks online watching this. A little less people than we were hopeful for, but I think that's the nature of community events like this. However, I do want to thank you all for being here today. I want to thank you for our speakers who are going to provide for us today some important information. Also for the volunteers who have helped set this up. We really thank you for all of that. And my name is Pastor Mark. I am the pastor here at Harmony Grove United Methodist Church. We're delighted to have you. Renee is going to get you oriented to the facilities and that kind of things and a little bit about the day. But I'd just like to say a couple things. One is that in preparing for our end-of-life decisions and situations and our own death and dying, there's some biblical models for this too. I mean, we hear about the story of Joseph in the Old Testament, who is down in Egypt, and he prepares for when he will die that his family will take his bones back. So he makes kind of arrangements for that post-mortem, post-death activity. And also too, of course, we see Jesus on the cross. When he's dying there on the cross, he takes care of his mother to make sure that she's taken care of. So this idea of preparing for that time when you find yourself at the end of life, preparing your family and your community, is biblical. It's also best practice. Any of you who have been in a situation where you've had a loved one pass and they've done no preparation whatsoever and you have no idea what they want, it can be pretty anxiety producing. Whereas if you've been in the opposite situation where someone you love has passed and died and you have everything prepared beforehand, then you can focus on the grief process, which is really the best practice. And so, once again, welcome. I just want to open us with a word of prayer, then hand it over to Renee. We call upon all that we consider holy and invite your presence here with us at this time. We pray a blessing upon those who are presenting and those of us who are listening, that we might learn things that will help us to be prepared, not only for ourselves, but also for our loved ones. Bless this time together. It is in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mark, for getting us started there. My name is Renee Baca. I'm a member here at Harmony Grove United Methodist Church. I'm also the lead of our health and welfare team, and that is the team that, with Mark's direction, has brought this presentation to you. So thank you for coming today for our Navigating the Complexities of End-of-Life Care and Choices. And again, it is the choices that make a difference in the planning that we make for these times that occur in our life. And death is part of life as well. And you know that life goes on after us, and we want to prepare our families as well. And like he said, provide for our community still as well after our death. So just to give you a little, for those of you all that are here, the bathrooms are back over. If you go out of the sanctuary and turn to your right, they'll be right there on your right as well. If you have any need for any special need type bathrooms, there are some down the hall straight near where our offices are, and one of our people will direct you to those if you need. Feel free at any time to get up and take a bio break if you need. We will be having a break though after the first two speakers. So just to let you know a little bit about our day, we're going to be getting started here at first with Lisa Oliver. She's coming from Advanced Care Planning Task Force. She's a board member on the Georgians for End-of-Life Options, and she's a life transitions coach. She also has a colleague, Phyllis, that is going to be with her today as well. She's going to present from 9:30 to 10. Then from 10 to 10:30, we're going to have senior living options, and Olivia Taylor will be with us. She's in community sales director at Atria Park of Tucker. We're going to have a brief break after that. There is food and drinks out there in the narthex as well. Again, feel free if you need water or whatnot to get up and go get some quickly, or we will have that break time as well. And then after the break, from 10:45 to 11:15, we'll have the palliative and hospice care presentation with Reverend Dr. Lenny Peters. a chaplain at Crossroads Hospice, and then Oluwafonto Filani, who is a provider relations representative at Crossroads as well. End of life care at the bedside will be presented by Jennifer Rackstall, who is a end of life guide, companion, and a death midwife, a death doula. And then we'll end up the day with funeral home choices by Kelly Smith, who is a certified pre-planning consultant, sales manager and family service director at Floral Hills Funeral Home and Memory Garden. You do have an agenda as well. If you picked up one of the bags that was out in the narthex, there is an agenda in there for you, and then we do have an end of program survey, if you don't mind filling that out as well, to let us know how we did, or if this was of interest to you, and any other type of events that you might like in the future that we could maybe provide for you. So in that bag also, or at the table, we do have some information about our World Labyrinth Day that's going to be on May 4th here at Harmony Grove. Also, in accordance with end of life or illness and death, we have our prayer shawl ministry, so we do have some information about that as well. Our free little pantry that is helpful for food and items in the community as well, and then just about our regular services as well. So those are things that are in your bag today also. And then please feel free to get any of the literature that others have brought with them today and use that as you need during these presentations. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead and have Dr. Lisa Oliver come on up. And again, she is Advanced Care Planning Task Force. You've got your own microphone, correct? All right. She came prepared.
Okay. Young man, what's your name back there? Hey, Carter, I'm Lisa. So, okay, thank you. Good. So, can everyone hear me okay? All right. Hey, everyone. I am Dr. Lisa Oliver from JLO, and that is Georgia for End of Life Options. And so here's the agenda. I know you're wondering, like, who is JLO? Pretty much, who is Dr. Lisa Oliver? What is advanced care planning? So I'm going to talk about advanced care planning, its benefits, and what are the components of what I'm going to call a. I'm also going to quickly cover the resources for advanced care planning. Now, Jay, I have a lot of handouts out there because we only have 30 minutes. I'm just going to get really long for today. I'm talking about the fourth and the three limits of advanced directives, and then I'm going to tell you a story of this Hollywood person, John Cena. All right, let's go, Carter. So some things you're going to see I have to read because I need to get it right, and this is one of those things. So JLO is Georgia for End of Life Options, and our mission is to strengthen advanced care planning throughout the state, as well as advocate for laws and policies for advanced end of life decisions. Okay, this is me. I'm a JLO board member, and I'm the leader of the Advanced Care Planning Task Force. I come to you with a Doctor of Education in Adult Education from the University of Georgia, and my research profile was Death and Dying, Emotion Work, and Reform Learning. And I also had the wonderful opportunity to be a chaplain intern at Grady. This is another thing I'm going to do. But this is important, because you have to do this. So advanced care planning, according to caringinfo.org. Advanced care planning is a process, not an event, and it's planning for future care based on your values, beliefs, preferences, and specific medical issues. The emphasis on your is the key. And so essentially, an advanced directive is a document, is a what your mama thought you should have. It ain't what your spouse thinks you should have. It's not what society thinks you should have. Here's my opinion. You had no way of determining how you came into this world, but with an advanced care plan, you do have the choice of how you're going to leave this world. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so thank you. But you know, I like to talk with my hands, so I don't know how this is gonna go, but whoo. Okay. So why is it important? Is online better now? They can get it. Okay. Why is it important to have an advanced care plan? Because life can come at you fast. You know what? Here's what is it on fast forward again? Click it again. Okay, cool. All right, pull it back. Because I was waiting for that thing to go, life comes at you fast. Okay, so when I use examples, I like to use myself. This is my family. I have a son, Justin. He's 25. He lives in Washington State. My daughter, Caraway, 24. She lives here in Georgia, but on her own. And this is Jeff and I. And every Sunday at 5 o'clock, we have a family call. This is what we do. But like I said, life comes at you fast. My husband, he works at Mercer University. And he was trying not to get into the traffic, and so he was going down one of these smaller roads. As a result, he slammed into a tractor trailer, and he went into the hospital. This is me the next day. I'm talking to the kids, and I'm telling them what happened to their father. He has brain damage, laceration of his liver and his kidney. His chest was crushed. And the most devastating thing is that his spine was injured. So if he makes it through the night, he may be paralyzed. And I'm saying, but you know what? That's okay, because I got good insurance, and we're going to do everything that we got to do to keep our daddy alive. Because don't you worry about it. I'm having the doctors pull out all the stops. And then my daughter says, well, you know, Mom, if daddy can't go to the Home Depot and work around the house and piddle around in the car, it's really, you know, we should really just be comfortable. Plus, Dad always said he didn't want any heroic interventions happening. And I'm saying, you know what? Y'all are living on your own. I need your father. I've been with your father for 28 years, and I need your daddy here at the house with me. So, you know, whatever. We're going to do this because I need your daddy. And my son's always been the sensitive one, right? So he don't have a lot to say, but he's like, you know what? As long as we keep daddy alive, I have a daddy. So he doesn't really have a point, but everyone is pretty much worried about their own situation. So here we are, we're a close family, and not 12 hours later, we're separated. And the thing is, we forgot about Jeff. We all have our own needs. Now, the truth be told, Caraway has the right idea. Jeff did not want any heroic measures. He always believed if it's time for him to go, it's time for him to go. As a matter of fact, we could bury him in the backyard to save the funeral expenses. That's how, you know, basic Jeff is. But because Jeff did not have an advance directive, Caraway, the daughter, did not have a document that said, Mom, look, this is what Dad wanted. And so again, you had this family, we're close, but right now, we're all in our feelings and we're not taking care of our loved one. Thank you. So there's 5 benefits to having an advanced care plan. The first one is that the person has empowerment and control, which means even though you're not able to speak for yourself, you have a document that speaks for you. The second is that there's decreased family conflict. There's going to be some conflict, right? Because when someone is dying, there's conflict. But because you have a document that's signed by that loved one saying what they do and do not want, that decreases the conflict. The third thing is, the decreased emotional burden. Now, when you don't have an advanced care plan, someone is going to have to make the decision of what to do with mom, dad, spouse. And here's the thing. When you have to make that decision and you don't have any guidance, it's all these second thoughts. Well, maybe I should have waited. Well, maybe I should have waited another day. Maybe I shouldn't have had that intervention. You know, you might have siblings who may say, you killed my mama. You know, I guarantee you that we all have these family families do not talk because of something that happened generations ago. And I guarantee you either had to do with someone died and had to do with the funeral and all that kind of stuff, or had to do with making a decision to end someone's life. The fourth thing is you give clear communication to your health care providers what it is you want and what it is you don't want. You know, a lot of times we might be talking amongst ourselves and, you know, we might say to another person, well, I only want to have this if this happens. And so when this happens, you kind of play the conversation back in your head. Well, he was joking, so did he really mean to pull the plug? I mean, so when you have something in black and white, it's irrefutable, right? The fifth thing is it reduces unnecessary medical interventions. You know, we all talk about someone getting CPR. I don't know if you ever seen someone get CPR. It is brutal. I mean, CPR, I've seen it, it cracks ribs. It costs, in some cases, depending on the person, it costs more harm than good. If you talk about feeding, tube feeding, there's asphyxiation that can happen. There can be food that get caught in the airways. So my point is that if you read up on these interventions, as a matter of fact, I have something that I printed out from the VA, and it gives the risk and the benefits of all the interventions that are talking about in the medical community. So if you document what you don't want, it reduces the risk of unnecessary medical interventions. Go ahead, sir. So I have here four main components of a healthcare plan. I have the advanced directive, a dementia directive, a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment, known as a PULSE, and a statutory form of attorney, power of attorney. So let's talk about the advanced directives of healthcare. And that's this document right here. So there's 4 parts to it. Can you put that into player mode? I'm sorry? Yes, ma'am. Can you put it on? So when you play it, it does it. Okay. All right, we're going to do it this way. The first one is where you name your healthcare agent. And this is the person that's going to make decisions for you if you cannot or unwilling to make it for yourself. Now, the thing about the healthcare agent, you just can't name anybody willy-nilly. This person has to be willing to do it, right? And here's what's so important. It's really important that you have a conversation about what you don't want and what you do want in terms of your care. And the thing is, if we think about COVID, we didn't know, there's going to be, this document cannot cover everything. So you really need to be, have heart-to-heart talk with someone about what it is you want and what it is you don't want. The second one is treatment preferences. Do you want to have all the stops taken out? Do you only want to be in pain and fed? Not in pain. Do you want to be in pain? Do you only want to be not in pain and to be fed? So here there's certain options that you can choose as to what are your preferences. This third one is guardianship. In the event that let me put it this way. In the event that the medical community, meaning the doctor, the nurses, do not think that your healthcare agent is acting in your best interest, this is a person that you can name who can go to the courts and be named to be in charge of your care. And then the last one is effectiveness and signatures. You don't have to put a guardianship to it, but you do have to sign. So it's you signing and 2 witnesses. The caveat to this is that the 2 witnesses cannot be your healthcare agent, because that's kind of a conflict of interest. Oh, your healthcare. Yeah, they can't have anything to do. Yes, sir. Oh my God, I got that story. Yes. No, it isn't. Okay, so the gentleman here just talked about how sometimes there's contradictions, and he's telling about this man that had a tattoo. So let me tell you the story real quick. So this man came in, they found him drunk, right? And so they brought him into the hospital, and he had in his collarbone, do not resuscitate, right? And it also had a tattoo of his initials. So they get there, and they're like, the people have never seen this before. They didn't know what to do. So they decided to call the ethicist. And the ethicist in the hospital, let me back up again. If for some reason you do not feel as though you are being heard by your care providers, every hospital has an ethicist, and they can be the go-between between you and the hospital, and he or she works things out. So anyhow, they went to the ethicist and say, well, what do you do? So they got permission to go to his house to find out that, yes, he actually did have a will, I mean, not a will, but an advance directive. And so they went ahead and they allowed him to expire. But see, they didn't know if he lost a bet, and that was part of the test. They didn't know how to do anything. So you can do all the stuff right and still, and I think it took a whole 2 weeks before they got it situated. So he wanted to die right then and there, but then it took a whole 2 weeks before he got what he wanted. Look at you, knowing about this death and dying stuff. Okay. So the next thing is this dementia directive. And so the reason why that is great, because, when people, go ahead. So, there's different stages of dementia. And so if you have a loved one, or if you're about to experience dementia, you can fill out this document and talk about what is it you want at each stage, however your cognitive abilities decline. Go ahead. So a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment. What this is a document that's filled out by the medical establishment. For example, that is filled out by you. In Georgia, it does not need to be notarized. This PULSE, Physician's Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment, is filled out if the physician does not believe that you're going to live for another 365 days. So it is things here such as, and so here's the thing, here's the difference. This is a legal document, right? So if you have an advance directive and let's say you fall out at Walgreens, right? The ambulance, the EMTs are going to stabilize you, and only until you go to a hospital and an attending physician and another physician agree that you're not able to speak for yourself, that's when this is activated. This is a medical order. If you have this with you and you fall out at Walgreens and it says that you do not want to be resuscitated, you don't want this, that, and the other, this is just as if a medical doctor is standing right there with you. So that's the difference. This is legal, this is medical. But again, this is something that a medical professional needs to fill out. I believe in Georgia, it is a physician. In Colorado, it could be a physician's assistant or nurse. I'm not really sure. It depends on the state. But again, this is something that, and right here it talks about, do you want CPR? Here, do you want comfort measures? Do you want limited interventions, or do you want the full treatment? Do you want antibiotics? Do you want any artificially administered nutritional fluids? So again, this is a document that you have with you. Now, I guess you're wondering also, you can go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, in the resources, for example, Apple and Android, they have a service or a system that you can pull it up. But also, for maybe some of us who are not techie, one thing you can do is, one, carry it with you, but also put it on the back wall of your open door so when the EMTs come, they can see that you have it. There's a program in Georgia called the Yellow Dot Program, and essentially if you have a yellow dot in your window, the EMTs know where to try to find your advanced care planning documents. It could be on the refrigerator, or it could be on the back of the door. Yes, sir. Okay. Yes. Well, hopefully, if you are in a situation where you're dying, you will be communicating with your doctor often. But yes, this is like a discussion that you would have with your medical provider. You keep it, well, they should keep it too, but you should keep it and have it with you. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I would imagine. Yeah, I would imagine. There, give a summary, Phyllis. Phyllis said that actually that it's a medical order, but like this is just accident in pink is an actual pink form, and like any the physician hands them out. She also said that even though this is active, you can fill it out if the medical professional think the person's going to die within 365 days. Phyllis said that it usually comes into play about 6 months before the individual expires or is expected to expire. And then also the question is, what if the person lives 367 days? Do you have to renew? But like Phyllis said, hopefully if you're at this stage of your life, you're having a conversation with your medical professional, and that should be one of the items that they talk about. Go ahead, Carter. So there's also other advanced planning forms and orders. One is a do not resuscitate order. The other one is do not intubate. The other one is do not hospitalize. Now this is interesting. This do not hospitalize one is, let's say you're in a nursing home. And a lot of times if you're in a senior care facility and you get sick, they will send you to the hospital. This is a form that's saying, I don't want to go to the hospital. I just want to, if I have to expire here, this is where I want to go. And actually, I worked when I was volunteering at a hospice, there were sometimes when the hospital or the nursing home would send that individual from one place to another. So if you can imagine that you're sick, they're loading you on a gurney, taking you, it's very distressful. I've seen instances where some hospitals do not want a death on their roster. So because the person is dying, they send them to the hospice, where they may die 6 hours later. So if you can imagine if you've been the sickest you've ever been and you're being loaded somewhere to be taken somewhere else, it's just very distressful. So this is one of those things, do not hospitalize. And out of hospital DNR order. So again, if you get sick, you don't want to be taken to the hospital, I guess let it play where it lays. If you're at home, you don't want to be resuscitated, that's it. Go ahead, Carter. The financial power of attorney. So the idea here is that your financial power of attorney and your healthcare power of attorney should not be the same person, because there may be a conflict of interest. For example, what if my husband has somebody on the side and I get sick and he's like, yeah, just let her go because there's $1 million insurance policy that he's going to get because he's the financial person, right? So you don't, it's not something you should do, but some people, we only have one person to rely on. But that's just the thought. Go ahead, Carter. So the resources on advanced care planning. So this is a copy of the handout that you have. So AARP is really a good place for all things like that, as well as Caring Info, the National Institute on Aging. And these are other things. The Conversation Project is really good. Ellen Goodman used to be a columnist for the Boston Globe, right? And she was very close to her mother. However, her mother got sick and eventually died. But what she realized is that as close as she was to her mother, she never had the conversation about end of life and what should she do. So she came up with this idea, the Conversation Project, because you have some children who don't know how to speak to their parents about it. You have some parents who are unable to speak to their children about it. And so there's kits here that she has that you can download to how to get that conversation going with your loved ones. Again, Go Wish is a conversation starter. Come back, please. And then there's Ever Plans. So these are resources that I put out there for you. Go ahead, please. Storing and retrieving your advance directives. Here's the thing. You don't want your advance directive to be in the safe deposit box. You want it to have somewhere. It needs to be close to you. It needs to be available in a timely manner. And it needs to be somewhere that it can't be, the elements can't get to it. So if you have a paper document, you want to distribute that to your inner circle. You want to, like I mentioned, tape it to your refrigerator or to the back of the outside door, or scan your document, put it in your computer. These are Medic Alert, My Directives, and the U.S. Advanced Care Plan Registry are all places where you can upload your document, and when it's needed, it can be pulled electronically. Now, if you're interested in having a digital or video advanced care planning, these places offer advanced directive services. The Caring Advocates one is a great one because it focuses on people with dementia. And so these, again, some more video-based advanced directives that you can get online. John Singleton. This is a hot mess right here, y'all. So John Singleton, he's an American director. He was the youngest director. He was the youngest person nominated for an Academy Award being a director. So he was about, I don't know, maybe he was 40-something. But my point is that he had a stroke. He had a stroke, and people are about his bedside. And so he didn't have a living will. So people had to start making decisions. So his mother, who was his manager, tried to make decisions on his behalf. But his daughter was like, no, we don't want you making decisions. So both of them had to go to court so that the mother would get guardianship to make decisions. So if you think about the craziness of that, is that when someone is sick, this is the time that y'all need to be loving on them, cracking jokes, loving on each other. But no, they're going to court. So, most of us live on a 30-day cycle. So, he was in the hospital a little bit longer, and then bills started to need to be paid. He had employees need to be paid. So then his mother had to go back to court to get financial power of attorney. And again, you're away from your son. Your son is very sick, and you're unable to care for him and love on him because you're trying to take care of his business. Then eventually John dies. It's a will. But the will was done when he was newly married and had one child. At the time of his death, he had 6 children, 2 wives, and I think children from outside the relationship, right? So we're talking about, you had this little bit of money, and of course the will's going to be contested because there's such a change when you were married with a child and now you have 6 more children. So again, all this money that he made and his estate, it was torn apart. And when you think about it, they may only get $1,000 a piece after the lawyer fees, because they're all going to have their own lawyer. There's court fees. So my point in this is that here's a person, he's successful, but he didn't handle his business. And when he died, instead of having his loved ones around him and loving on him, they were all fighting each other and going to court to do what they need to do. And at the end, his children didn't get as much money as they could have if he had planned accordingly. So that's all I have for right now. Is there any questions? Yes, ma'am. Right. So I'm not sure, Reverend Mark, or do we have someone talking about wills? Okay. Yes, ma'am. So a living will speaks for you when you can't speak for yourself. So for example, right, it's part of the advance directive, but the living will is what's speaking for you. I know. Check her out. She just kept on saying, I don't want to do anything with this. Okay. No. So this is the living will part because it's speaking for you because you can't speak for yourself. So the advance directive is all this. Who's your healthcare agent, your treatment preferences, your guardianship, and the signatures. So this is the living will part. Anyone else? Thank you, y'all. Yes, ma'am.
So the advance directive that we have here is the statutory legal form in Georgia. Lisa mentioned an advance directive for dementia. We do not have that here in Georgia as a legal document, right? There are other states use one informally. Utah's the only state that legally allows you to put one on your advance directive. But our advance directive in Section 2 has a Section 8. It has blank lines for you to write in any instruction you want, guidance for your agent. And if you are interested in putting guidance in around dementia, I suggest that you look at those models online. Just Google Advance Directive for Dementia, they'll pop up. And write in Section 8 on those blank lines what you want, especially around hydration, nutrition, feeding, artificial feeding, hand feeding, right? So while we don't have one legally in Georgia, I encourage you all to find one, use it, attach it. You can even say in Section 8, see attached Exhibit A, and make your own advance directive for dementia using those models.
Yes, ma'am. Your healthcare agent is your power of attorney for healthcare. Only healthcare, right? Because if you want if you want someone with your finances, that's a different form. Hmm. Okay, thank you, y'all.
I just wanted to say, as someone who worked as an ethicist, I was the chair of two ethics committees, one in a hospital and one in hospice. And the degree to which you have this paperwork filled out is significant for helping make sure you get what you want. Because if people come to the hospital, it's like, who is the next of kin and what's the pecking order, who has the right to make decisions? It's not just the oldest son, it's all the children if it's not specified, and you know how that dynamic could work. But the idea of being prepared makes a significant difference. Instead of bringing in an ethics committee and having an ethics consult and them trying to help you sort through that decision-making process.
All right, and thank you again, Dr. Lisa Oliver, and then Phyllis as well for adding in some extras there. And just to lead real quick before we get Olivia up here as our next speaker, what Pastor Mark was saying is very true. I am a nurse. Pediatrics was my main forte, and it's never too early to let your plans be known. Some of the children that I cared for, cystic fibrosis, cancer, and that type of thing, they were very wise, and they knew they needed to prepare their parents. And things like the video that you were talking about. One of my patients did a video for his parents to let them know what he wanted done, and that it was okay. He was okay, and he wanted them to be okay. So it's never too early to do this planning and to keep it updated as well. So just a little bit from experience also. So our next speaker is Olivia Taylor. She is the Community Sales Director at Atria Park of Tucker, and she's going to be talking to us today about senior living options. So welcome, Olivia. Come on up.
Hello, everybody. I don't think I'm going to hold this. I'm from Atria Parker Tucker, Atria Senior Living. We are the second largest senior living community in the United States. We own the Atria brand and Atria of that does senior living and Atria Holiday that does all independent living. So what I would like to talk to you about today is the different levels of senior living. A lot of times when I get calls from people, they're confused about what's the difference. So I think there's about 5 different levels of senior living. The first one is where you go out and you decide that you want to downsize. I don't need this big house anymore. I'm an empty nester. I'm 55. Let's get us a house so we can grow old in together. So you get you a small house or condo in a 55 and active community. You do that on your own. I get a lot of calls to say, oh, I'm looking for a 55 and active. This is not senior, that's not assisted living, which is where I'm at. So that's the first level. Then you find that, say your spouse passes away, or you and your spouse, one of you guys are a little bit having difficulty walking or things like that, but you're still pretty independent. So you want to go to a community where you have people who are like-minded and around the same age, your peers, but you don't need no help with anything, and you still like to cook. You want to have a regular apartment. That's when you go into independent living. So that's a community that has cottages, beautiful apartments with 2 bedrooms. They have, some may even have a bathtub in them. They have a full refrigerator, a stove. They're beautiful communities where you can grow older at. However, if you're in that independent community and now you start to have needs for help, you can bring in some help in there if you want to, home help, but that's when the family and children, adult children, they start to worry about mom and dad because they're in this independent community. The place closes and all the staff is gone at 8 o'clock at night. Now who's taking care of mom at night? Who's taking care of dad at night? What happens if mom and dad falls? Mom and dad is showing signs of dementia. The independent community will probably contact the family and say, hey, we think mom and dad needs to move. They're going in other people's apartments. Dad is falling constantly. Dad's in a rehab. He's broken his hip, and the independent community said, well, he can't come back here. And it's not just they're mean. It's because they can't take the liability, okay? So if you can't come back or you're having problems with dementia, you just, they had to tell you, hey, you got to move within 30 days. It's against the law for us to have you here and take on that liability. That's when you go into the 3rd and 4th type of senior living, assisted living and memory care. And that's what Atria Park of Tucker is. I'm going to skip over from that. After that, if you become bedridden, you have tube feeds. You now have a tracheotomy. You need someone who can do skilled nursing services with you on a daily basis. Then that's when you go into a nursing home. A lot of seniors think senior living, they think automatically nursing home. So when I grew up, I don't even know if there was assisted living. Everything was nursing home. And it was, who wanted to be there? It was not the best environment. So now I'm older. I learned about senior living from assisted living from actually working there. And it is nothing like a nursing home. Our communities service people to help them on a daily basis, give them the things that they need and can no longer do, but they still have an apartment of their own. The difference between assisted living and independent living, you don't cook on your own anymore because we don't know that you can or you want to leave the stove on. You have 24-hour staff there. There's always a caretaker. So even though you just have some trouble taking your medication, you're having trouble taking your medication, remember taking your medication. But other than that, you're doing pretty good. We are there for your medication management. You have your independent time. We fix all your meals. We clean your apartment. We do your laundry. There's a nurse on staff for 8 hours, 5 days a week. There's always care staff there. There's a maintenance person there. Your cable is provided. We give you an alert pendant, and we put that family at ease knowing that mom and dad is taken care of, okay? So we can do something as simple as just manage your medication or help you with your ADLs. ADLs are active daily living, the things that when you're healthy you take for granted. Can you comb your own hair? Yes. Can I brush your own teeth? Can you get up off the chair, which I had difficulty doing just now? Can you get up off the chair on your own? Can you walk independently, or do you need somebody to spot you when you walk? Those type of things is what we do in assisted living. And we also offer memory care, which ties into what the doctor was talking about, the advanced directive. You have to have a power of attorney and an advanced directive to go into memory care. By time that mom and dad are ready for memory care and families are finally seeing the light that this is something's not right, we had to get this taken care of, they are adamant they're not going. They are adamant that they could take care of themselves. They believe what they're seeing and they're going through, which I always explain to the family. If someone told me that I don't see this person right here and I can see them plain as day, I would be upset too. You know, you're telling me that I'm not seeing what I'm seeing, and what's happening to me is not happening to me. So it's hard to get them to agree or to understand their disease once they're in it. Lots of things can take you to dementia. Something as simple as a person is perfectly fine, gets a UTI at home in an independent community. The family's not there visiting them every day. The independent community is not checking on them in any kind of healthcare form, and they fall. Go to the hospital, get the UTI taken care of, probably get a hip replacement. Who knows? That person may not bounce back. I get it all the time. Mom was just fine. I was talking to her on the phone the other day. We went to lunch. It was just fine. I can't believe that she is hallucinating and not bouncing back. A UTI is devastating to a senior. Personally, my own mother, passed away from a UTI that went unchecked because she's had UTIs before. I know what to do. She did not know what to do. Home remedies do not work when you're a senior. So you become septic and pass on. So what we are here for is we're here to advocate for the resident, they're not patients, advocate for the resident and the family to get them to understand that we're not a nursing home. We're going to give your parents the best life that they can have at the end of their life. We call it the next chapter. A lot of people, I think our oldest resident is 100 and he's going to be 103. Yes, and he's in memory care. He was a judge. He also fixed on the planes for the Tuskegee Airmen. So, and then we had a resident was 107. These are two different residents. The 107-year-old was in assisted living. She had her mind. She didn't even have a high care level, but she was 107. She still needed that help. And then the 102-year-old, he's in memory care. So you just never know how you're going to progress. And a lot of things can cause dementia: high blood pressure, alcoholism, disease, sickness, anything can cause that. So, and behaviors may come out as well. So what we do is we just help those people while they're there live their best lives. Memory care, you have no refrigerator, no stove, anything. We do the most for them. Assisted living is just what it says. We are there to assist you, be as independent as you can be, and help you with friends and family. So at Atria, I've worked at 2 assisted livings, and I will say that Atria is the best. We have a model that when a resident comes in, we partner them with an ambassador, someone who has a past history similar to theirs. So if they were a teacher or they like playing a certain game, we kind of partner them with them. So that way, when they come into the community, they're coming into the community with a friend. They go to lunch together, they go to activities together, and then they branch off and get to know other people. It's a really good family atmosphere. The situation with coming into assisted living is all private pay. So just like the doctor was speaking on, you got to have those POAs and advance directives in order, and also the pulse that was up here was saying, how do you want to be revived if something happens? It's private pay, so there's a couple ways that people pay. They could do long-term care insurance, which is great if they have that. That is a reimbursement type of plan. Another thing that happens with our seniors is mom and dad prepared the family for this. They took out long-term care insurance. Now they have some dementia. They might be even capable for assisted living, but they refuse to use that long-term care insurance because they can live at home by themselves. If you have it, use it. There's some beautiful communities out here. Make that plan with your family ahead of time. I know that there might come a time that I'm not able to articulate what it is that I need, and I might be fighting against you, but believe me, this is for the best, or I would not have taken out this long-term care insurance, okay? There's also aid in attendance. Aid in attendance is a program for anyone who served during wartime. So you could have been a cook in the military during Desert Storm. You served during wartime, so you can get aid in attendance. The senior living community does not help you with this. This is something that you have to do on your own, but let your family know, hey, this is what I did. Look into this, okay? My mother was awesome. She had like written instructions of what she wanted done, and there wasn't any fighting between us because I was going to follow her rules regardless. So I had put those rules down for my daughter to know, and of course we didn't have internet back then, but I have the email, so I've emailed it out to the whole family. If there's any arguments, you're going against my wishes because they are there, okay? And it wasn't a will or anything like that, but it's written out, the instructions. So this way, you'll know if dad served in the military during wartime. It protects the spouse and the husband and the wife. So if dad is deceased, mom is a widow, they had to have been still married, she can still get aid in attendance. Having a conversation with your parents. I suggest you have this conversation before you get there, because if you have it during that time, I heard this phrase the other day, and I've heard it all my life, and I didn't understand it until just recently. Once the adult, twice the child. So they don't understand, and you don't, as a salesperson, I don't want to come to anybody, you got to take care of your mom like she's your child now. Did you tell your kid that you don't want to go to school? It's okay, you don't have to go to school. So I don't want to talk to my family like that, so I give them this book. And this is having a conversation with your parents. You can't keep working around it forever, okay? Most times, when our residents move into our community, they're at the point that something detrimental has happened. Mom's in rehab, they're about to discharge her. The independent living that she was in, they won't take her back. She's in New York, I don't know what to do. And thank God that I've been in it long enough so I can just work my way through with the family. But if it had been done ahead of time, you would have a plan in place and it wouldn't be so stressful for you. Because the number one thing that I hear from families is, I done took off work for the past 2 weeks. This is such a struggle. The kids are about to go back to school. I'm about to lose my mind. I say, let me take this off your hands. Let me do as much as I can for you. But if you had done this stuff beforehand, you would have a plan in place. Mom is not agreeing with me. She is fighting me on this tooth and nail. I don't know how I'm going to do this. If you had the POA or the advance directive in order, Mom and you are on the same page when it's done. She doesn't have dementia. She said it was okay. Don't feel bad for, guilt is a big thing with the families. They feel really bad about having Mom go into assisted living until she's there. Mom would never play games like this. Mom would, oh my God, she's dancing with people. She was so upset. Yeah, she was, but she got over that hump. She came in, she made friends immediately. She's happy, she's healthy. You can go about your life and become the daughter again, become the son again. That's what our families love about us. This is going over the things like it's better to be together. A really hard time for seniors was 2020 when we had to do all the COVID and everyone couldn't be around each other. That is very hard for a senior, and actually a lot of increase in dementia because the loneliness, the depression, and anxiety is big. Even though, you talk to mom or dad on the phone and they're laughing with you, a lot of times they're suffering from depression. They haven't even eaten. So many people come in and they done lost like 20 pounds. They're not even eating. It's just not healthy for them to be alone. We are meant to be together. People are meant to be together. The cost, average senior living starts off without care about $4,500. That's with no care. A month. With care, it goes up to about 55, if that's on a low care level. And that is the average across Georgia. Okay, there's places that are higher. When you come into senior living, the family is looking for something that they would rent, not what mom and dad will rent. Well, she came from a 3,000 square feet home, and this is just a small apartment, looks kind of like a hotel. It has a kitchenette, and a bathroom, a large bedroom, and then a sitting area. This is just not enough room. How much room do your parents use at their house? They use the bathroom, the bedroom, and the kitchen. That's where they stay. And they have this big house that they can't take care of anymore. Your son, your daughter, the grandkids are coming over constantly having to fix this or do that, find things, and they sometimes our seniors become hoarders. There's just things that they do not need all that stuff. So that's hard to get people to let go of stuff. It's hard for the family to see mom in a smaller place, but if you really stayed with mom and dad, you would see that they only using those 3 rooms. So if you want a bigger room, we can talk bigger rooms, which is going to cost a lot more money. So those are some of the things. So what we do is we give our yes, it's a supplement. It's a supplement. I find that teachers have excellent long-term care insurance, and the older teachers, they have phenomenal. Everyone's is different. It's whatever you signed up for. Sometimes they give it to you for like 5 years, and you have to have ADL needs, which is you need help with grooming, toileting, transferring, eating, or medication. So if you have at least 2 of those 5, then you would receive that. And it's a reimbursement. So you pay up front and they reimburse you. Once you get it on a regular thing, you can just use that money to pay for it. A lot of people don't understand that, and they expect the assisted living to do that for them. We are not allowed to touch those long-term care insurances. It's totally up to the family. If you have a senior parent, I'm a senior, I want my kids to know what I have, and I want to put them on as someone that they can talk to, because I'm seeing younger and younger people come into assisted living. Our youngest resident, she's actually 37 and she's there with her mother, but it's like an autism type thing. But as far as a regular person, not that young, it's usually about 68. High blood pressure, heart attacks and strokes can cause dementia. So we give you guys a sheet that will actually do a workout of how much you're actually paying at home compared to paying in assisted living. So at home, you may be paying your mortgage payment, you're paying for a caregiver. Caregivers, outside home health is $25 an hour. They have to do at least 4 hours. Most people need more than those 4 hours. Or they do need those 4 hours, but they're not all at one time. So I'm good with healthcare. I'm not talking against them, but here's the situation when I had my mother-in-law that was a problem with the home health, is they would do their 4 hours with her. They'll come in, give her a shower, get her breakfast, get her dressed, sit for the next 3 hours, change her before they leave, and then they're done. They have to do 4 hours, and they're not going to come back and forth doing 4 hours. Your 4 hours of care at Atria, care is separate, would be $655. That 4 hours is throughout the day. So if you happen to have an accident or need something early in the morning, they're going to come take care of you, but they're not going to sit in your room all day and follow you around all day, or just sit and sleep in your room, because that's what a lot of healthcare home health do, because they're there all day and they don't have to work that whole time. So those are things that if you did the comparisons, it would even out or even be better to come assisted living, because if you got your mother or father 24-hour care with the home health care, is $25 an hour, and that's quite expensive. Visiting nurses is they're like, I use visiting nurses. They gave us home health at home for my mother-in-law, and again, they had to do the 4 hours, and that's how they came into the house and they did the things. But to be honest with you, as soon as I got off work, I was doing all the care, because in the morning time, other than getting her a shower, dress, and breakfast, the rest was up to me. Your insurance will pay for certain parts of home health, and I'm not sure because I don't work in home health. With my mother-in-law, the insurance did pay for hers. So even if you decided, hey, I want to have hospice come into the assisted living, or I want a home health to come in assisted living, you have to check with your insurance to see if they'll cover that. Medicare, you would have to check with them to see if they would cover that. We also have a physician that comes into our community, and Medicare does cover the physician's visits. We have a podiatrist that comes in, Medicare covers that. A PT/OT person, Medicare covers that. They cover everything besides that apartment and assistance. Okay. Georgia's a different state. I think Ohio, where I'm originally from, they did a lot more for their seniors. Georgia does not. So we have this comparison sheet. If you went over the comparisons of your apartment and everything that we do, your house and everything that we do for our residents, you will see, even though it's a lot of money, when you hear $4,000 a month, it's a lot cheaper and it's peace of mind. We provide all our meals, 3 meals a day. So say that for lunch we're having fish or chicken. If you didn't want the fish or chicken, you could have something from the garden, something from the deli, or something from the grill. Maybe you want a grilled cheeseburger, maybe you want a Reuben sandwich, or maybe you want a salad. You can have 5 choices. We serve restaurants now. We come to your desk, say, hey, Mrs. Smith, what would you like to drink? We get them their drinks, soup or salad. It is completely professional. It's like they go out every day, and they love it. They love to interact with the other residents. Our food is good. Atria is, we really hone in to make sure that we're doing everything that's possible to keep our residents happy. We also have Billie Jean King is the tennis player. Yes, she's tennis. She is, her mother was in a atria in California. She liked the way that we did things so much that she became an ambassador for our communities and helped corporate with the exercise program, and everything that we do is trickled down from corporate. So you're going to go to this atria, that atria. We're going to be pretty much the same other than the state regulations. So when you average it out, it is worth the cost. You can find places that are cheaper than atria, that are less expensive. But do you want, I always tell people, it's based on your finances. If it's all that you can do, then you need to follow your finances. If you can do more, give your mom or father the best life that they can have until their time here is done. And a lot of people do see it that way. They do see it that way. This is our building. We're right off of Lawrenceville Highway, 5844 Lawrenceville Highway. And we only have 60 apartments in our community. We have lots of couples, and we have a good demographic between men and female. Women and men. We make our promise to you, and we give our families this quiz to ask them, how is mom's social life right now? Mom don't have a social life. She's home all day, and I call her when I get off work. What is she eating? I'm not sure. Sometimes I take food over, or maybe she'll find a sandwich in the refrigerator. What's the home environment like? It's good. House is clean. She's there by herself. I have a caregiver come in for 4 hours a day. Do you think she can leave independently? No. That's why I have the home caregiver come in, and then I just put a camera in her house and watch her at night. I get that a lot. It's not a good suggestion to put a camera in and watch her at night, because by the time you see the camera, mom's out on the street walking, looking for the dog that was just in her house. I've had it. I had a woman who was looking at a picture, and she was talking to her picture and walking because she's not taking her medication. She's forgetting to take her medication, okay? And here is just a demographic of our community. So if any of you guys would like to come over and meet with us, please feel free. We have a lot of residents from this area. We have an atria of North Point that goes all 3 levels, independent, assisted, and memory care, but it's out in Alpharetta. And then we have just this one here in Lawrenceville. We're all over the United States. I have moved people in from India, New York, New Jersey, Nebraska. A lot of kids are not where their family is now. Oh, I moved a lady in from California. So we can help you and give you the resources that you need to bring mom in. And also something I always try to do for my families is they have financial difficulties or need something closer to home. I try to recommend other places to them too, because my goal is actually to help families and seniors, not just to bring people in to Atria. There's lots of resources out there for you to use. So all of these things are outside on the table. Please feel free to take one. My direct cell phone number is here. Please feel free to call me if you have any questions, or email me, and I will get back to you as quickly as possible. Do anyone have any questions? Nope. We do the doctor says, we get a paper from the doctor. It's called a physician's medical evaluation. The physician's medical evaluation will say what all your capabilities are or what your capabilities aren't. And if you need medication management, it depends on how many passes you have a day. So if you take medication once a day and it's 10 pills, you're on level 1. And that's 520. If you take medication twice a day, that is also level 1. You take medication 3 times a day, you're on level 2. And if you take medication 3 times a day or more and have a special medication, which is inhalants, ointments, eye drops, injections, or patches, that's a level 3. And it goes up $100. So 520, 620, 720. Our care starts at 3.5 hours. Yes, ma'am. Our care starts at independent. They don't do anything for you. They will tell you that they have a home health service in the building, and you can use the home health services to give you your medication. Problem with that is, if you take medication at night, who's giving you your medication at night? That home health is only there for a couple hours. That building is shut down at 8 o'clock, and home health is not there. Not taking your medication can enhance your need. So if you get to that point that you actually need assisted living is your best option. Yay! Who? Oh, yes, yes, yes. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Margaret actually, I don't know if she was working or not, but she had her computer set up in her room, and she was back there still working, and she made friends. She actually have came up to visit us and brought the dog over, since you can do a short-term stay there. It's month to month. All assisted living is month to month. All you have to do is give a 30-day notice. So she comes up from time to time to visit us, bring the dog. She made some lovely friends, and she just had a lovely time there. We loved Margaret. Yes, we did. Oh, yes. Family can eat with you. It's it's like $7 for a meal, and it's just a good atmosphere, and we did love Margaret. I also have some pins out there for you guys, too. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. We had someone who, the family was here, and they brought mom from the Virgin Islands. That was not a good thing. She loved it there, but she wanted to go back to her home. So she stayed with us for 3 months, and then she went back to the Virgin Islands. Yep. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. If you need me, just please grab my card.
All right. Thank you again, Olivia Taylor from Atria, for. Yes, we do here at Harmony. Pastor Mark just said that through some of our missions, we also have a team that goes over to Atria on Tuesdays, at least once a month on Tuesdays, and that's built a nice relationship. So we appreciate our relationship with Atria as well. So we're going to take a quick break for the next 15 minutes. So if you'll take a break, feel free to get some food, get some of the literature that may not have been there at first when you came. Make sure you do get one of the bags that's out there as well, and any other items. Again, if you need to take a bio break, the bathrooms are right out of the sanctuary and to the right, and turn right again, and they are there. And we will start again at 10:45. Thank you. So with the direction of Pastor Mark, our team has kind of gotten this together because we're wanting to do some events like this.
What a great idea to have a health professional.
So, yeah, we started it, it kind of had a little bit of health and welfare side stuff, but it really got organized and together when COVID hit. We needed that to support members, and especially on homebound and things like that, you know, for
Sure.
and then
Sure.
just overall health, like CPR instructors and different things like that.
I think we're getting ready to start here,
Well,
folks.
nice to, what a good ministry.
Yes. So I'll introduce y'all here in a minute, and we will get started. All right, if you all can please come in and take your seat. Hopefully you had a time for a bio break and a little bit of snacks and drinks. Saw a little networking going on out there too, so that's perfect. So now we're going to get started back. Some information about palliative and hospice care, and we have Reverend Dr. Lenny Peters, who's the chaplain at Crossroads Hospice, and then we have Olu, who is the provider of relationships and representative at Crossroads as well. So welcome. Come on up.
I will begin, and then at the end, Olu will introduce herself, and she'll also be available at the table to provide resources from Crossroads. But I'm here today not to speak about Crossroads, where I'm a chaplain, but to speak about what hospice care is and also palliative care. I've been in ministry for over 50 years. I started as a youth minister and I was going to be a campus minister. That was my calling. And somewhere along the way, when I grew up a Southern Baptist, and they dismantled campus ministry. Thought that was too liberal, so that future disappeared. So I ended up kind of as an associate pastor at the First Baptist Church in Washington, D.C. out of seminary. I was very fortunate. That's the church at 6 blocks from the White House, where Harry Truman walked with one Secret Service agent to church every Sunday. And, of course, then Jimmy Carter taught Sunday school in the balcony there. I came right after Jimmy Carter left office, but did get a chance to meet him occasionally when he came back to the church. Then I came to Oakhurst Baptist Church, where I spent 28 years as pastor in Decatur, Georgia. The reason I think I lasted 28 years is they had the best sabbatical policy imaginable. I got a sabbatical of 4 months every 4 years, so that kept me fresh and benefited both the church and me. Yes. By the way, I'm a huge advocate of pastoral sabbaticals, so don't get me and because the way it benefits congregations as much as pastors, and I'm a witness to that. But anyway, that's not what I'm here for. The first half of my ministry, as you might expect, I didn't think about death very much as a young man. When I got to Washington, D.C., I had an occasion where a member of the church had a brain tumor, and she had 5 children, ranged from about 14 to 22. A wonderful person, and very young, and her around 50. And I was very close to the family, all the kids, and spent a lot of time with them. And my wife and I happened to drop by one night. We were going out somewhere, and we decided we weren't far from Bobby's house. So we dropped by, and her husband Hugh was there, and one of her daughters was there, and we were there. And Hugh and Bobby were singers. He asked us to sing some hymns, some of her favorite hymns, and then while we were singing, we noticed that her breath became labored, and then we sat there and we were stunned as her breathing slowed down and stopped. And it was the first time I'd been present at that incredible moment, that sacred moment, that mysterious moment when a person transitions from this world to the next. And ironically, or maybe symbolically, more symbolically than ironically, by the way, let me pop my phone, put my phone here so I can keep up with the time here. So that Bobby was an artist, and she had actually done hand calligraphy of my ordination several years before. So the first death I was with was, and my first impulse that night was to call the senior pastor. I said, we should call the senior pastor. And Hugh said, why? We have a pastor here. And I think that was when my ordination became real, that I was called for that moment. So during my 50 years of ministry, or particularly the last 2 or 3 decades, the biggest change I've observed, and I'm sure Pastor Mark has seen this too, is that the biggest change I've seen is that in the way people are buried. When I started as a pastor, you know, everybody was having traditional burials, and you had 3 or 4 days to get a service together. And by the time I retired, I rarely did a service with a body present. Almost all memorial services, they could be weeks or a couple months afterwards. And so that was, but the other big change was that I'd never heard of hospice at all early in my ministry. And in my own personal life, that was true too. My father died at a fairly young age. He was a minimum wage mill worker with some mental illness and died in a nursing home, and we had no idea. I was I was fairly a young man and had no idea of what resources that might be available to him. No one told me about any resources. It was a Medicaid nursing home to where my about 15 years later, when my mother died, she was living with my 2 sisters, and they were under enormous strain, bathing her and taking care of her and doing all the things to care for her. And my brother and I suggested hospice. And my sisters were like, they had heard of hospice, but they said, no, we don't want hospice. That's telling Mama that we think it's almost like they thought is like, Mom, we're going to let you die. And we said, we're not going to let Mama die. We're not going to tell her she's dying. And so we had a long conversation about what hospice is, and they finally reluctantly signed up for it, telling us that, you know, if we don't like this, we're going to stop. They loved it. Suddenly there was somebody coming there to help bathe and clean Mama. Somebody's going to get they're not running drugstore for prescriptions. They're not even going back and forth to the doctor. The doctor's coming to them, and so plus there's no expense. Medicare pays completely for hospice, so they were actually spending a lot less money than they were before hospice. And my mother didn't quite understand what hospice was either, but she would come to say that, you know, these young women that come by, these friends of mine, they are so nice. They help Nancy and Lisa bathe me, and she just, and I find that as a chaplain, I'm amazed when I go out and talk to patients. They become very close to the CNAs, maybe as close as anybody, and they end up feeling like they have friends come by, and the nurses and the chaplains and social workers. So here's a basic philosophy of hospice. To be in the here and now is to be living in the moment. Some people refer to it as living one day at a time. There are occasions when one day is all we can handle. This may be such a time. Our wish for you as a caregiver is that you may be able to be here now with your loved one. We want to affirm the choices you and your loved one are making and help you achieve your goals in keeping with your loved one's wishes. You know your loved one, their values, wishes, concerns, and goals better than anyone. We want everything to be as they want it to be from this moment on. Many changes may be occurring for your loved one, and you may be experiencing feelings and concerns which seem overwhelming. The spiritual and emotional content is provided by our chaplains, social workers, and counselors, nurses, and aides. It's important to keep a feeling of connection so that as nearly as possible, everything will be done in accordance with the patient's wishes. More than any other time, it's crucial to follow their directions now. You know how to do this more than anyone. So the best hospice care is empowering. It's empowering families and individuals. Now, as I mentioned, hospice is available to anyone who's life expectancy has been determined to be 6 months or less. And of course, I don't know of any doctor that would say they know that somebody's going to die within 6 months. And obviously that's an estimate of how long might live. And we often have a process called recertification. And that's when you maybe after 6 months, when 6 months approaches and you're still living, maybe even not doing okay, then we have to recertify to see if you're still hospice eligible. And that involves either the patient's doctor or our doctor looking at the medical condition. And we have a weekly meeting, an interdisciplinary meeting where we all talk about every patient, and we each contribute our expertise. I would talk about, for instance, the spiritual concerns that the person has or the family does. A social worker might concern about maybe that they need some groceries or something. And of course, the nurses and doctors look over all the person's condition, their pain levels, anything medically that they need. Occasionally, it's rare that people end up, I have a church member, and she was recertified a couple of times, and then she seemed to hit a really good plateau, and when I went to visit her, she said, well, Lanny, I either graduated or failed hospice. They kicked me out, and so she's still not in hospice. Now, this is sort of like, the odds of that are kind of like every young boy wants to be a professional basketball player, and some of them do make it. And occasionally people do graduate or fail hospice, but it's rare because most of the time the diagnosis is accurate. You have less than 6 months to live. At that point, as a chaplain, I get involved, particularly when I go out and someone is deciding whether or not to begin hospice and want to talk to a chaplain, or they may talk to a social worker, doctor. But in my case, when I go out, we talk about caring versus curing. When my mother found out she had cancer and had about 10 months to live, my brothers and sisters were there with the doctor, and we were all talking about what if she does chemotherapy and whatever. And we were looking at all the medical things. My mother hadn't said a thing. And this wise young doctor who looked like younger than my kids, pulled a stool up, sat face to face with my mother and said, well, Miss Peters, what do you want? And my mother said, well, honey, if I do that chemotherapy, all my hair's going to fall out and I'm going to be sick all the time. She said, yes, that's true. And she said, and you said it might not even help. She said, well, actually, I think it probably has about 1/3 chance of extending your life, but it will not save your life. And Mama said, well, I don't want to do it. And the doctor said, well, what would you like to do? And she said, well, I want to go visit my brother and sister one last time. She looked at me, honey, I want to come to your house one last time, Jerry. She laid out the agenda for the next 10 months. And we had our marching orders. We did everything on our list. And I visited her last at Christmas that year. And she said, honey, I want to go ride in a car. She never had a driver's license. So when I came home, she always wanted to go ride somewhere. She said, honey, I want to go ride somewhere. And it was Christmas. And it took everything. She was in so much pain. We kept saying, Mama, you sure? We got her in a car. And we went around looking at Christmas lights. And and then when she came back, we got her out, and I knew that was her last ride. And she died about 2.5 weeks later of her own accord. My dad and my mom are probably are extremes. My dad had no agency in his dying, no really support. My mother had my sisters living with her, my brother and I, and she had a lot of agency. So I think hospice is trying to give the patient and the family agency as much as you can. Now, it'll depend a lot on the person's condition, whether or not they participate in the decision. I've just lost a patient who was a retired doctor, and he had pancreatic cancer, And first time I visited him, he said, "Oh, I'm going to talk about my pancreatic cancer about 5 minutes, but I want to talk theology." He was a Presbyterian. He'd actually gone and gotten a theology degree after he retired as a pediatrician. So we talked for an hour about Karl Barth and Robert McAfee Brown, but each time I'd come back, he would talk a little more about disease. But he knew he was dying. He was in charge of his dying, but many of my patients have been Alzheimer's, some for many years, and when the families come to the decision, it's part of a long goodbye. In fact, they've had a lot of anticipatory grieving, whereas sometimes with the doctor's family, the son had not had much time to do anticipatory grief. I mean, his dad found out his dad was dying and had about 2 or 3 months. He moved from Colorado to be with him. So anyway, family dynamics are such an important part of what happens in hospice. But one thing about it, it's like a lot of these things today, this thing is about, is people either decide they're going to have no plan about where they're going to live when they age. They're going to have a last minute, when forced to, make a plan, or they're going to just leave it to somebody else to make all the decisions. And, my mother on the other hand, she would not talk about her funeral one bit. Had no interest in talking about it. Whatever y'all do, you do. And some people really like to participate. I have patients that I spend time with, and they plan their whole funeral. I have a patient that loved to sew. She sewed her children's clothes, and she sewed the dress that she's going to be buried in. She'd been working on it and got it finished, and actually her daughter has a picture of it, of her wearing it when she finished it. And so basically, hospice is to it's a team. It consists of a physician, nurse, home health aide, social worker, chaplain, bereavement specialist, anticipatory grief, and we'll be with a family up to a year after the death, and volunteers. We have volunteers to go out who might help walk a dog or do some grocery shopping. But basically, your team will come up with, each person has an individualized plan of care that the family participates in, can have a copy of it anytime they want to. We'll just go ahead and say, as a chaplain, what I love is I go out and do a life review when they come in. Tell me about your story. I love stories. Tell me about your history. And then ask things, are you in a faith community? Or how much support do they have? I love to look at photos. If I come into a room and somebody's got a photo album, I say, can we look through this album? And it'll bring back memories. In fact, if there's no photos in the rooms, I ask the families if they could provide one. Music. I had a patient who was nonverbal. I hadn't heard her speak in 2 or 3 visits. And I said, well, I'm going to play some music. And I played a couple of things. I ended with Amazing Grace. And she said, beautiful. That was the only word I'd heard her speak in 3 visits. Music is one of the last things. Dying is a natural process, and hospice is to have your own agency in deciding how you and your loved one want to spend their last days. And it's about quality as opposed to quantity. Our medical system is all about quantity. They'll keep you alive long after sometimes even you want to be alive. I have a lot of patients say, I don't know why I'm still here. I want to go. Sometimes I have to talk to families because sometimes they're holding on because their families don't want them to go. And we have to have talks about, she's waiting for y'all to give her permission to die, don't you? And so, I love the work. And one thing that I'll put I'm not here to sell you on Crossroads because it should be like all the funeral homes and everybody else is presenting. CCRCs that, do your own research, ask people, but talk to our staff, and you have a chance to talk to Edu here in a minute. But one thing I particularly love about working at Crossroads, and as a pastor who's been in the community for over 35 years, I just unretired at 72. I'm back full time. I can't believe it after 7 years of doing some on-call and part-time. But one of the reasons I chose to go back to Crossroads is because they have several programs that are unique. Hospice Medicare is just like when you get to be 65 and you decide which medical plan you're going to be in, Part C or whatever. Basically, they're all the same, but different companies offer different bells and whistles. You might get a gym membership, you might get some free this or free that. However, so basically Medicare sets exactly the rules for what hospice provides. And then hospices have to decide what are they going to add on. And one thing that Crossroad adds on, which I particularly love, is that they are committed to trying to make sure no one dies alone. And we do have people that no one visits. And so we have a program called Even More Care. And in when we determine the person's actively dying and likely to die within 24 to 48 hours, we try to have somebody there around the clock, an aide or a chaplain or somebody, or maybe a group of people coming in. And that is not reimbursed by Medicare. That is something that comes out of the profits. And there's some other unique things. You can look at the brochures. And I'm out of time here, but I forgot. I was going to mention palliative care. Our specialty is hospice, but we do palliative care. And easier than explain it, there's this little brochure back there, and it'll tell you exactly the difference between palliative care. Palliative care, in essence, is still when you're not ready to stop treatment, and it's more complicated than hospice because it depends on your age, your insurance. It's not paid for by Medicare. It just falls within the Medicare rules, but it's a way of getting extra help beyond what you're able. But again, it's not necessarily free. It can be. It just depends on where you are in your Medicare benefits. But anyway, I'm happy to be around. And yes, go ahead. All hospices, when you come into hospice, you sign a form that says, would you allow the state or federal government to come in to your home to see how we're doing? It's a random a sample. However, all facilities are heavily regulated and our services are heavily regulated by the state, by the federal government. So yes, very, very much so. Well, home hospice is it's basically the same services, except like my mother died at home, my dad died in a facility. In other words, our philosophy is the same. Obviously, in a facility, we're supplementing the care that they're getting there. In a home, we're providing almost all the care, even though a lot of people will also have private care that they want in addition, because what we don't offer is people confuse hospice and they want to think somebody's just going to be there whenever they call them. And that's not true. You do get, and as you near death, you get more services. So you'll get more often visits and so forth. Anyway, this is a person, I'm going to let her introduce herself, and she's the one that can, there's good information back there, and her card's back there. You're welcome to call Crossroads, and if you want to talk more about what chaplains do, you can call and ask for me. Our brochures are back to Edith.
Thank you so much. My name's Olu Falani, and my role is the provider relations for Crossroads Hospice. I'll be very brief. Reverend Lenny did an excellent job. My experience is in social services, so this was one of the companies that I utilized the most. I was in a skilled nursing facility, so I would oftentimes see individuals have to be put on hospice. And I was able to witness firsthand just the level of quality care that Crossroads was able to provide. So it is a privilege to be a part of this company. If you guys have any questions, my role is essentially just the front end to kind of enroll people and, do some of the programming in the community. So thank you guys so much for having me and inviting us. It is a pleasure, and I'll be up front. So if anyone has any questions on how to get in touch with us, just let me know. All right. Thank you.
this your phone up here? Yes, you all did excellent on the time. That is for sure. So, yeah. So, thank you all for that regarding hospice and palliative care. Also, just again, I mentioned I am a nurse, and palliative care is also available, and it's getting where it is starting to have hopefully some pay for that as well in acute situations, in ER and whatnot like that, where there's a severe accident or something like that. And palliative care is available there because it's not, quote, hospice care, because it's not that 6 months before they die. So just to know that there are palliative care type things as well in certain situations that now hopefully we're going to start seeing some pay for as well. Yes. So thank you. Yes, always good to have more information about that. It depends on the companies and whatnot. Or the question was, is palliative care available in the homes, similar to hospice care? And it is getting that way more. Again, it depends on your insurance. It depends on the company that you're going with. But there are, if you don't have, for the hospice care, the 6 months type qualifier that kind of puts it in hospice, there are more places that are providing what they call the palliative care as well, that would be anticipatory before the hospice. Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for putting that in there. And again, it's helpful with that anticipatory grief, just like he was saying. Just like we talk about anticipatory guidance for children as they're growing up through their milestones and whatnot, we also need to remember that us as adults, we need anticipatory guidance with certain things, and especially when it comes to end of life too. And a lot of these resources are very helpful for that anticipatory grief, and palliative care and hospice care. That is one of their fortes as well. So thank you. All right. Well, now we have Jennifer Rakestraw, sorry. And she is end-of-life guide, companion, and a death midwife. So she's going to talk about end-of-life care at the bedside. So welcome.
I've got a PowerPoint. Can everyone hear me okay? Oh, I have to adjust that because I don't have the height that Dr. or Pastor Lenny did. Okay, so I'm Jen Rakestraw. A little bit closer to the microphone, thank you. I'm Jen Rakestraw, and I'm a death doula. And I know I meet the societal expectations of looking normal, but I'm not, fooled ya. What is a death doula? So if you'll go to the second slide. We are midwives. We help in transition, providing both physical and emotional support at end of life. And this comes in a variety of ways. So I can come in and physically help the family's bedside, but what I do more than anything is educate and start very difficult conversations. So doulas have been around for a very long period of time. You've probably heard of a birth doula, someone that comes in and supports at the time of transition when we're coming into this world, all right, we're being born. And what I do is I come in and help in transition as we're exiting this world, this reality, into the next. We are known as death midwives, shrouded women. That's very ominous. I kind of like the term because it's dramatic. For those of you who can't see me, I'm a little dramatic. We are a centuries-old practice. So in many, many years past, particularly before the 1950s, women would come in, predominantly women, and we would help families. We would come in and clean the bodies. We would prepare food. We would clean space. We would help with the planning of the funeral services and support the family. And then after, help make sure that things were put in place so that folks could grieve and then try to get back to life, living a new normal. So if we transition that to this day and age, where things are a bit more clinical, we have more people passing in hospitals or in a hospice facility or an assisted living facility, I would come in and kind of help the family get ready for what's happening next, hold their hand, give them some respite care, and then after the dying process, can kind of coordinate a little bit, help them with the funeral. It's like planning a wedding, but not as cool, still flowers. Help them figure out what we need to do next. Like, do we need to clean out a closet? What needs to be addressed? Have your bills been paid? Are you eating? And ease them back into life. So if we go to the next slide. All right, the why and the how. The why I got into this. So a little bit of a background for me. I've been in employee benefits for 25 years, since 1998. I basically go into mid-sized companies, help build benefits packages for the employees, educate the employees on their benefits, and then make insurance carriers do their job. So I'm real comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. Also, when I was 18, I was an assistant at a cemetery. I kind of fell into this job. They needed a secretary that was going to answer the phones and greet people with a big smile. And I kind of looked like a labradoodle, so it worked. And I would make cookies and coffee and then sit with folks that were visiting their loved ones at the cemetery. And I absolutely loved it. So not only do I have this kind of knack and skill for having uncomfortable conversations, I can also have a very comfortable relationship with death. It's not taboo to me. Fast forward to 2019, and I sat at my father-in-law's bedside as he was passing. And I noticed that when hospice came in, mad respect to hospice, mad respect to the hospital system that he was in and the assisted living facility that he was in. But for 3 months, I sat with him bedside in a hospital room. And then he transitioned to the assisted living facility, and I began helping with care because my husband at the time was on the road, and my sister-in-law was unable to physically. She was not able to care for him. I took on his care. And I began to notice that even though we had these wonderful resources, there were a lot of gaps. Some of these gaps were, does anyone in here know the size sheets that you buy for a hospital bed? Throw your hand up, come on. It's an extra long twin. I didn't know that, but I knew that a hospital bed was going to be delivered to my father-in-law's room, and I had to get sheets. I had to get bedding. I called nurses. I called friends of mine that had worked in hospital systems. I put a call out on Facebook. I couldn't get that answer. I didn't know that I was going to need an extra long mattress for him or an extra thick mattress for him, or that I could advocate for that. I didn't know that some of the hospice equipment could be older and be loud and rickety, and it would need to be serviced. I did not know that I was going to be given a silver box that had a little code on it, and inside that silver box, there were going to be opioids, narcotics, and antipsychotics, and I was the one in charge of them. Nobody else could get in that box but me, and I got to administer the medication. I was scared to death. I was absolutely scared to death. So I got through that process. I stayed with my father-in-law as he passed, and then I took care of my mother-in-law for the next year and a half until she passed in 2020, in May of 2020. And it was that I started feeling, okay, I can have an uncomfortable conversation. I can work at a cemetery. I can take care of my loved ones. How did I transition that into something that helps others and fill the gap in there? And I came across a program where I could become an apprentice to become a death doula or a death midwife. And I took the 9-month apprenticeship, and here we are. Okay? So I'm kind of new to it. That means you're new to it. And it's nebulous. This is not a certifiable degree or moniker or affiliation that we get just yet. So how I break down my doula services or my death midwifery services 3 ways. I educate, I advocate, and then I assist. So education is starting the hard conversations. It's exactly what we're doing right now. I want to talk about, have you thought of X, Y, Z? Have you had a conversation with your loved ones, with your parents if your parents are still living, with your spouse, with your kids, or whomever is going to take care of you? Have you even given any thought to what you want your death to look like? Not your funeral, but your death. What does your death look like? Do you want it quiet? Do you want it to be a celebration? Do you have an advance directive? Do you have a living will? You know, do you want to work with your regular doctor, or do you care who's taking care of you in those moments? Are you scared by hospice? Like Pastor Lenny said, do you even know what hospice is? And let's get educated and let's start talking. So if we'll go to the next slide, please. So educating, preparation and planning. We have had more people. I love this space, by the way, because we've talked so much about communication and open dialogue and unabashed, unfearful dialogue about dying. Because there are two things that are certain in this life. We're going to die in taxes. You can't escape either, right? So if you're going to talk about taxes, you might as well talk about your death. What in a good world would a good death look like? For me, it would be closing my eyes and not waking up. But that's not reality. There's probably more to it. So you start partnering with Dr. Lisa, who spoke first, and you start laying out some plans as to what do I want to happen at the end of my life. And then, what do I want to happen with my body? Because you can say, oh, I don't care, you can do anything, but that really puts a tremendous amount of responsibility on your loved ones. So do I want my body donated? Do I want to be cremated? Would I like a natural burial, or would I like a full funeral service, traditional burial as we know it in this day and age? Like, I want it all. I want to pick out my casket and the lining and the dress that I'm going to wear when I'm in it. And there are people that want that, just like there are people that want a really big fancy wedding, and there are other people that want to get married in a backyard or go to a justice of the peace. So pick your path. And then I start assisting people and going through implementing that. So I advocate and educate. And if we go to the next slide, please. Then I'm going to advocate for what you want to happen. So people will typically call me at the very end. So I'm either going to do a speaking engagement or I'm going to show up when we know that it's time. Like, as somebody said in here earlier, our expiration date's been stamped. Like, it's time. We know, we got a date, all right? So what are we going to do now? I'm going to make sure that your wishes are seen. We have the documents in place. We have really sad family members, and we start to work together so that we can celebrate this time and come together rather than being at each other's throats, right? The little dog up there, by the way, that's my nephew Puppy. That's Knox. And Knox was helping me with the practicum for my death doula apprenticeship, which is I had to hold a mock funeral at my home. And Knox was there along with my very best friend and her new boyfriend, and thank God they're still together because I thought I was going to scare Richard completely off that day. My mom was also there, my sister was there, and we walked through the process of what it would look like to have a funeral in our homes and take on some of the care ourselves, because that's something that I want. I want that personal touch. So these are things we think about, and the more we talk about things, the less taboo they become, the less uncomfortable they become. We can laugh about it, we can giggle about it, and then we can know that a plan is in place. So I'm gonna advocate on behalf of your plans, right? I'll be the kind face in opposition, going, no, Mom really wants to be cremated. And I know that doesn't feel good, but she wants to be cremated, and she really wants her ashes to be put with her son's ashes at the cemetery. So this is what we need to prepare for, and we need to make calls on. And the next slide is I assist. So I assist in the process. What does this look like? This looks like me coming in and cleaning a space. What I have noticed, not only in doing my doula work with adults in advanced age, but also with children, because I work with a pediatric hospice firm as well, and I've actually worked more with children and families than I have with advanced aged adults. is typically the space becomes very cluttered and is not tended to. So when I go in a space, the first thing I do is I clean up. I'm going to tidy up a little bit. I'm going to get rid of tissues. I'm going to organize. I'm going to make the space smell nice. I'm probably going to put on good music. I'm going to bring in some flowers. I make a killer pasta salad. It's probably a bad term. Okay? But little things like that, light things to lighten up and begin to meet the physical needs of the family. Because you have the burden of loss. You have the burden of grief. So I'm going to come in so you can do what you need to do to get through that process. I do a lot of my work with kids in hospital rooms. I'm also a photographer, packed a lot of life into 47 years, a lot of life. So I'm a photographer and I do bereavement photography. And when I come in, I'll clean up and then begin photographing, and then I'm talking to the person that is passing, or if they're already gone, I'm talking to them. And I'm letting them know they're loved and they're respected, and that this is a really beautiful space, and that I encourage the families to speak to their loved ones. The hearing is very much the last to go. And even after passing, there are certain things on your heart you need to say that you may not have been able to say before, but in this moment, you got to get it out. When my grandmother passed, it's a funny little anecdotal story. My grandmother had 10 children. She was a devout Catholic woman, also an RN. She was an RN in the emergency room for 40 years, so fantastic lady. If you look at the picture that's up there, I know it's very dark. It was done that way for a reason. That is actually her ring. It's a dogwood ring my grandfather gave to her when they got engaged. I have it now, and I love to photograph it. And this was one of my little artistic endeavors for my shrouded lady kind of situation. Told you I'm dramatic. So Grandma passes, and it takes us all a little bit of time to get to her. She was in St. Petersburg Beach, Florida, and she wanted to be cremated. She has land, had property in North Carolina, and she wanted to be interred, her ashes scattered in North Carolina next to my grandfather's, Ace's. That means that Grandma's got to stay on ice. She's not being embalmed because she's going to be cremated. And we have a whole bunch of family coming in from the four corners of the planet to see Grandma. So we get there. They bring Grandma out. We have to keep a body at a certain temperature after we go, so Grandma's on ice. Like literally, Grandma is on ice. And all of us girls, I don't think that, her sons weren't there at the time, so we have 4 daughters and a whole bunch of nieces. And we're all gathered around Grandma, and it's very solemn and it's very sad. And then we start to snicker because each one of us is taking the corner of the blanket and trying to tuck it around the ice so you don't see it. So we start giggling a little bit, and in those moments, that's where my mom and her 3 sisters that were with her at the time started to speak up and tell stories about Grandma. And little confessions of things they did and got away with when they were kids, and things she had done for them. Like, one of my aunts liked to sneak out at night, and Grandma would make sure to leave the back window open so she could sneak back in without Grandpa hearing, you know. So there are things that need to be said at the deathbed and then after, because you want to get it out. So say what you need to say. Say it. Take those very precious moments, those sweet, tender, delicious moments that you're not going to have again. I encourage that dialogue. It's a beautiful thing to me. It's a really beautiful thing. I did this with my mother-in-law too. Thankfully, she was able to pass at my home. So during COVID, I moved Mary in. I took care of Mary, and then in her passing, it was my sister-in-law, her daughter, and I with her. And we were able to cry and laugh and hold her hand and still touch her before she had to leave our presence. So as a doula, that's what I want, is that connection again. Because once they go to our wonderful friends at the funeral home, once they're gone and their body is being prepared, we don't get those again. So savor those sweet moments. Yes. Okay, the question was, how did I come up with photographing bereavement photography, photographing funerals. There are 2 times when big families are together, weddings and funerals. And in Southern tradition, we will all stand outside the church and take pictures, and we look awful. We look awful. And I understand the power of Photoshop. No, I'm kidding. I actually got into bereavement photography through an organization known as Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. So I've been a professional photographer since 2016. This order put a call out for photographers who would go into hospital settings and photograph children and their families at the time of death. And I did that. Again, I have this strange, comfortable relationship with death and hard conversations. So I began the process there, and then I've expanded it. Bereavement photography and death doulas come in many forms. So I have a friend who is a death doula she was actually one of my cohorts during my apprenticeship. She does Marie Kondo style cleaning. So her doulaship work is she will go into families and help them very gently and kindly clean out their space post-death or in preparation of death, even in preparation of a move. So if you're going into an assisted living facility, it is tremendously taxing and stressful on the system to start parting with all your belongings. It's painful. So she would go in and help with what can we take, what is necessary, and then what needs to go and be donated someplace so it's useful for someone else, what needs to completely go away, what can be left to the family. I have another death doula friend that will actually go on your behalf when a pet is being put down and stay with your pet. Not all of us can do that. I have 2 German Shepherds and 2 cats. Again, I am not normal. So I would sit with my pets, but there are those that cannot. And this woman will go and stay with your pet and not leave your pet and make sure your pet knows that it's loved. My particular forte is families and babies, and I will go in with my babies and I talk to them and I photograph them and I love them and I clean the space and I help the families through the process of losing a child and then what life looks like after. So you can always ask me questions. They don't have to be that good. But that was bereavement photography. Yes, sir. I am still putting my fees together. I'll be very honest. And I have difficulty with that because I love this and it's a passion and I have to be paid for it in order to live. Now, I'm still in the corporate stuff. I still do all my insurance jazz. But this is something I'm turning into a business. Yes, sir. I am typically called when someone goes into hospice, is when I'm called. On the children's side, I work with, I said, a pediatric hospice group, and their chaplain will call me, or the nurse that I know who's a very dear friend of mine. Shout out to Lenise Shortle. Lenise will call me, and she'll either say, I need your doula work, or I need your photography work, and I'll go and I'll meet with the families and take pictures, or go in and discuss with them what comes next. They would contact me directly if they wanted to, but I'm happy to either get a referral from a hospice group, but families have reached out to me directly as well. Yes, sir. Yes. Oh, so there are many registries. If you Google death doula, there are several different registries. And what I'm finding is we actually need a national registry. I don't know that that will happen until there is a proper certification process or it becomes a bit more regulated. I like the fact that it's not, but it means that we're still building pillars and foundations. And then you have to find the one that's going to be right for you. So in the Atlanta area, we probably have more death doulas than you would say in like southeastern Georgia. You're not going to find as many maybe in that area. And then you can find more that are going to be, like I've known some that are RNs, I've known some that are therapists, some that are spiritual workers, but maybe not in a traditional sense. So depending on what you're looking for. But there are websites, just Google death doula or death midwife, or call me and I'll see if I can put you in touch with one of my girlfriends. Yes, sir, I do. Oh, that's an excellent question. We'll go to the next slide. Oh, this is my resources. I'll go to, it's theheldhand.com is my website, and it's going to be on the PowerPoint at the end. But I wanted to give you guys some resources too. So just 3 very inexpensive resources. And I brought some samples with me today. I left them on the back table. So the first one is 5 Wishes. Now, when Dr. Lisa talked about the advance directive, that was so beautiful. It was so comprehensive, and it was Phyllis, correct? fantastic. You guys are amazing. I would really, really encourage you to talk with them. Please call them. Put an advance directive together. If you are skittish about doing so, or if you say have a young person in your life, like I'm 47, I have a 21-year-old son at UGA, go Dogs, because they get my tuition, I have to say that. They get my money. I would have someone start here at 5 Wishes. It's 5wishes.org. And essentially they ask you 5 big questions about what you want at end of life. It's $15. It can be done digitally or it can be done paper form. They'll mail you the paper documents. And it is a mini advance directive that can be filed and you can use it going forward. Again, it's $15. Yes, sir. You stop it, Mark. Really? Okay, there are some in the back. Steal them. No, we're at church. Borrow them. They're not legally accepted. Okay, so Phyllis has a good point. That's an excellent question. I know there is a place that you can file it once you put it together, but it essentially is the starter packet for letting people know what you want to do. Yes. Okay, so what Phyllis is saying, especially for the people that are online, and this is excellent information and why we all work together. Remember, this is not me coming in saying do this instead of this. We are a group of people that are trying to prepare you for one of the biggest moments of your life, and that is death. Okay, or if a loved one is dying. So what Phyllis is saying is this is an excellent place to start to get your ideas in order, but you have to make sure you follow through and file. I would equate this with people who use like an online will service and then you never properly file the will. Remember, I did 25 years of benefits, so I'm the one that's going to say, hey, have you updated your beneficiary this year? Where are your life insurance policies? Are they through your employer or do you have an individual plan? What type of life insurance are they? Do they have an age reduction when you hit 65? If it's term life, it probably does. So these are things to think about and discuss, and these are good starting points. So that's my first resource. The second resource is from Barbara Carnes. Hang on. So Barbara Carnes is an RN that has worked in hospice for many, many years, and she's written probably the definitive book on end of life. It's more of a pamphlet. This thing's about 15 pages long. It's super easy to read. I brought a couple of copies today, as samples in the back, and then I have one here with me. Her packet up there of 5 booklets is $15. And this will walk you through very high level what to look for at end of life. This is called Gone From My Sight. This is her book, Gone From My Sight. And like I said, it's a small pamphlet. It's teeny tiny and easy to read. Nice big font too for those of us. I didn't even bring my readers up. Good for me. So if you are interested in what it looks like at the end stages of life, this gives a descriptor of what to look for in cognition, physically, and action. Like what people are going to be going through as they pass. And you can get all 5 of her booklets from her website for $15, or I think this little booklet is maybe 3. You can buy them in bulk too, because I take them with me when I talk to people. So that's resource number 2. Remember, I've got you under $15 for each of these. The third is one of my favorite on Amazon for $13. It is a planner. It's a little planner, and it's called I'm Dead, Now What? And it's a lovely book, a workbook, where you can physically write in what you want done at your service, letters to your family, websites and passwords to get into computer systems, access to accounts, the code to get into your garage, where the key is for the safety deposit box, where your life insurance policies are. You see, they're snickering over here because people know that gets lost. Do I have a safety deposit box? Or are you like my parents and they have a fireproof safe that they lost the key for and they just keep it open? They just keep it open. All right, if there's something important that you know you want, where the will is kept. Thank you, where the furniture goes. Who's my dry cleaner and why, where do I pick up my clothes? Stuff like that. I borrowed Aunt Edna's earrings and I haven't given them back. Maybe we should return those, or don't let Aunt Diane at the funeral. Whatever. But it's a workbook and it's about $13 on Amazon. And it is, again, an excellent starting space to getting your thoughts recorded, practical information for your family if something happens to you, and it can be updated at any time. So great resources. Again, I had a sample in the back, one that I bought, and it was on the tables. People may be looking through it. Oh, it's gone, it's fine too. But these are 3 little resources as a death doula that I would go in and say, let's start here. Let's just start here. Let's ask some questions and be real about what's happening. And the next slide is my website. So again, I'm Jen Rakestraw, like rake and straw put together. Looks fancy, is not. No, ma'am, not yet. No, we don't do that. I'll write it down. And it's theheldhand.com. The held hand. Like I'm going to hold your hand through it. Yep. Rakestraw. No, just Jen Rakestraw. It's theheldhand.com. Yes, Miss Phyllis. I have not seen hospice cover doula fee. Insurance doesn't cover it at this time either, and that's because, again, it is not certified. I would like to see that in the future, first and foremost, because I do work in benefits and work heavily with insurance companies, medical insurance companies. I would like to see birth doulas covered because they are RNs, and they should be covered under insurance plans, but we haven't gotten that far yet, at least not in the state of Georgia. Not that I'm aware of, no ma'am. And remember, death is not a respecter of persons. This is not just for us who are 40 and over. This happens for young ones. Have conversations with your children, not only about your care, but also about theirs. What happens if? Because as a single woman who has a 21-year-old son and 2 German Shepherds and 2 cats, I have to have hard conversations with my family because my son Max is probably not going to have the wherewithal to take care of mom at 21. He's very intelligent. He's very, very bright, but that's a lot for any person, especially a young person. So I've had to have hard conversations with my sisters that you guys are it. Basically, I tell them that Max is my primary beneficiary. He's like Miss America. He's the winner. He gets the crown. He gets the roses. But you're my contingents. You're my runners up. So if something happens to Max, you guys have got to come in and handle my estate. The animals. You got to think about your animals. Yep. Well, not everybody wants to take care of 2 German Shepherds. That's why I have them. They're rescues. Any additional questions? I think we're pretty good on time. I only took 15 minutes. I'm rounding it out. All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you again, Jennifer. We appreciate that information. And then for our last speakers, we have Funeral Home Choices, and we have Kelly Smith. She's a certified pre-planner. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. I met you, Kelly. I'm sorry about that. That's all right. I should have known. That's my memory thing here. Little memory cure for myself. But he is a certified pre-planning consultant, sales manager, and family service director at Floral Hills Funeral Home and Memory Garden. So come on up, Kelly. We welcome you. And Dwight, you're staying back there then? Okay. He's got a colleague, Dwight, with him too.
All right. Morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? My voice is pretty dynamic. My name's Kelly Smith. I was just introduced. That's Dwight Gardner back here. He's one of our senior advisors. Brenda Carswell and Monica Sanders. I wanted to bring them up with me because to introduce our staff, but they're back attending to families. So, you know, it's our business is always going to be fluid. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you a broad brush of things. I hope to keep it interesting, hope to keep you captivated, and give you a little bit of guidance on some things. And then want you to know that we have a sign-up sheet in the back that if there's any further information that we can follow up with you regarding anything that I'm going to talk about, please feel free to ask us, and we'll call you or email you. The process is simple and that. So before I get into it, I want to share a couple of quick stories with you. The first one was in 1977 when I graduated from mortuary science school. And I was finishing up my internship at a very large funeral home in Los Angeles. And this family had lost their husband, and Mr. Cunningham, who was the owner of the funeral home, said, you know, Kelly, you've been with us for a few months, and you've been getting trained and everything. I think you're ready. Go in and handle this family on your own, okay? And I said, well, I appreciate the confidence, and I'll give it my best effort and job. So I went in, family arrived. It was a lady that lost her husband, and she had 3 children, an oldest son, a middle son, and a young daughter, okay? And when I sat down with them and we exchanged greetings and pleasantries, I went to his wife and said, you know, Mrs. So-and-so, tell me a little bit of what you want to celebrate your husband's life. And she went on to say, well, we're very active in our Catholic church. We're traditional Catholics. My husband wanted to have a rosary the night before and then a massive Christian burial the next day, and buried in one of the local Catholic cemeteries. And I said, that's fine. The oldest son then said, well, Mom, you know, Dad had talked to me a little bit about this, and he was very, very proud of his service in World War II. And he's involved in American Legion and VFW. Dad told me that he wanted a military funeral and wanted to be buried in National Cemetery. All right? The middle son chimes in. Says, Mom, Dad and I talked about this. And he didn't want to have a big service or a lot of falderall. He just wanted to have some private service with our immediate family, a few close friends, and be buried in a local cemetery so you could visit easily when you wanted to, okay? And then finally the daughter chimed in and said, I talked to Dad, Mom. He wanted to be cremated. He didn't want to have any services, and he wanted to have his ashes scattered either on the ocean where he fished off of Long Beach, California, or up in Mammoth Lakes where he used to ski in the mountains. All right, so here's this wet behind the ears 24-year-old. I have a wife who wants a traditional Catholic burial, a son who wants a military service with military honors, another son who wants a private family service and burial in a local cemetery, and a daughter who wants a direct cremation without any falderall. Okay? Fast forward to about 5 years ago. I lost a son to cancer. And, excuse me. Anyway, you know, Matt was 36 years old and healthy, vital kid. And started having a pain in his side and thought he was having a recurrence of kidney stones. And he was at work, had a lot of pain, went into the emergency room. They said, nah, this is something different. So he had tests and scans and biopsies and everything. Well, it turned out he had stage 4 melanoma, 36 years old, okay? So his fiancée at the time, or at that time, she was a professor, a clinical professor at Emory. So fortunately, she had pulled some strings, and we were able to get Matt into the Winship Cancer Center there, which is, if you have melanoma or bad skin cancer, that's the place to be in the country, okay? So oncologists talked to us and said, well, it's serious, but, you know, Matt, we're going to do everything we can, give you all the advanced treatments we can, but I'm going to tell you when it's not working anymore. Okay, so a couple months later, we had that conversation. And Matt had on his bucket list to go to Iceland. So he went to Iceland with his fiancée, Erin, and they were there, and he got sicker. And then when he came back, it was a time where he had to go into the hospital for a while. So it was getting bad. So I talked to my wife, and I said, you know what? We have to start thinking about Matt's service, okay? And she said, yeah. And we didn't include, we had talked to him, he grew up with a funeral director dad, so he grew up above a mortuary for a few years. But anyway, we talked about it, so I went into one of our funeral homes that was near our house. I went in there, I sat down with the funeral director, did all the arrangements for Matt, wrote a check, and walked out, okay? And as I was walking out of the door, I thought to myself, I'm glad it's done. I'm glad it's over. I did the right thing. And so when Matt does pass away, which is a gut punch if any of you have ever lost a child, friends and family coming from great distances and stuff, we'll be able to spend time with them. So Matt passed away. We had a beautiful celebration of his life, and that was it. Well, just now, I've said all that to say this, because it's a conviction that I've had ever since I walked out of that first family back in 1977, all through my 40-plus year career, dealing with my son's death. And here's the conviction. There's never, and I'm using the word imperative, negative, never. There's never a good time to take care of funeral arrangements. Never. No one wants to do it. It's not a good subject. Never, never, never. But a better time is when you do it before there's a death, whether it be yours or someone else's. But the best time to do it is when you involve yourself in the process for yourself. That's the best, okay? So, few things. First of all, is there any veterans in the room? Raise your hands. Thank you for your service. I talk to a lot of veterans, and here's one thing that I find. Most of the time, they're incorrectly given information, or they're working on bad information. So I want to dispel some things real quick on that. The United States Veterans Association does not pay for a funeral or a cremation service. The only time that the Veterans Administration and military will pay for a funeral or cremation service if you die during active duty, whether it be in a war zone or not a war zone. That's the only time, okay? They have some great benefits, and I'll just broad brush them, okay? If you're honorably discharged veteran, you have, on the cemetery side, you and your spouse can be buried 100% free of charge, both of you, everything included at a national cemetery. Beautiful, and there's one up in Canton. If you've ever been there, yeah. Probably not. Yeah, probably not. So they'll take care of all that. Now, you're eligible, a veteran's eligible, his spouse, and even a dependent person if they're in that care. So, for instance, I've run into veterans that have an adult child, son or daughter, that's disabled or Down syndrome or something like that, where they were under their care. They were able to be buried with their parents in that national cemetery. Okay. On the funeral side, it's a little bit different. None of the expenses are paid. However, the Veterans Administration does have some benefits available, monetary benefits, that they will reimburse the family for expenses if they qualify. But there's some hoops and loops you have to jump through. Okay, one is if you die in a VA hospital. Two is if you've been under a VA of a service-related disability or injury or something like that. So there's different bits and pieces, but it is something that can help. Okay, every honorably discharged veteran is given, their family's given a flag, and every honorably discharged veteran, the family is given a presidential certificate signed by the current sitting president. Okay, so Social Security benefit, it's still $255. It's been that way since the 30s. Okay. It used to be paid and reimbursed to anybody that took care of the expense of the funeral service. It's not that way anymore. It's only paid if there's a surviving spouse. So that's another JIP that has occurred within the last several years. It's not a lot of money, but you know, it's only paid if there's a surviving spouse. Okay, so that's really covers the government segment of it. Okay, now we'll talk about little things about cemetery and funeral and cremation planning. One thing that I find is that there's a lot of information that goes out there in the media, in the newspaper, in magazines, and know-it-all bulletins, radio commentators, and everything. Most of it is inaccurate. A lot of it's inaccurate. Everybody knows Clark Howard, and I like Clark Howard. He's got some good advice. Everybody knows John Ramsey, or is it Mike? Dave Ramsey, excuse me, Dave Ramsey gives good advice. But I've ridden in my car during their live radio shows, and I've heard them expound on some stuff about the wisdom and logic of planning ahead and taking care of your funeral arrangements that had got me so upset I pulled over to the side of the road and I called their radio station to try to get on, okay? And I talked to their producers and I said, look, Clark, Dave is giving inaccurate information. Here's who I am. Here's my credentials. Here's what I do. I'd like to clarify that. Okay, we'll get you on, all right? Well, I sat in the car on the side of the road in both those instances over an hour, and I didn't get to talk on the air. And, which, you know, it is what it is, but I thought, well, you know what? They probably didn't want anybody out there who knew the right stuff making them look bad or making a mistake, okay? And so what I can say on that account is always get information from the expert, okay? Do your research, check into the credentials. You know, most of the people in our business have an education background in it. I'm a licensed funeral director, licensed embalmer. I've got a certified planning certification from the National Funeral Directors Association. I'm licensed with the Georgia Insurance Department. I'm licensed with the Georgia Secretary of State for the Cemeteries Division. Okay, and most of my people are. Okay, so we have a fiduciary responsibility to give people the right answer and not guess or say what if. So it's always great to get that advice from an expert. The company that I represent, Dignity Memorial, is the largest funeral and cremation and cemetery company in the world. We're located right down the street in Lilburn. We've got 2,000 plus locations all over North America, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Canada. Okay. The benefit to that is a couple of things. One is we're not going away. Second, we're too big to go away. But one of the advantages it has for families that take care of arrangements with us, if their life changes, if they move to another part of the country to retire, or move to another part of the country because their kids want them closer, whatever the reasons are, our society's mobile now, you take what you have with us and move it there. Everything gets transferred. Funeral arrangements if you have them, cremation arrangements if you have them, cemetery arrangements if you have them. They go there, anywhere. And we've done that. We've had that in for years, okay? There's a lot of good funeral home firms and a lot of good cemeteries out there, and they're all good providers. We have a few things that make us a little bit different. On the immediate needs side, we have what's called our 100% service guarantee. We have one chance, folks, to do it right. There's no do-overs in a funeral. There's no do-overs in anything else that we do. So we make a pledge to all of the families that we serve that we're going to do everything that we can to make it right. Provide the services and merchandise and services that you need. If there's something that's wrong, we're going to do everything in our power to fix it. If we can't fix it, you're not going to pay for it. Okay, that's one benefit. Secondly, we have what's called our bereavement, our compassion helpline. Every family that we serve for up to a year after the death of the person, their family, their friends, if they're having a tough time dealing with the death, doesn't matter whether it's a relative or friend, we have a compassion helpline where that person can call 24/7, 365 days a year and have a licensed grief counselor at the other end of that line. And that could be a spouse calling because she's having a hard time dealing with her husband. That could be a mother whose daughter is having a hard time dealing with grandpa's death and needs some guidance. We make that resource available to everybody. Okay? The next benefit at the time that the families are dealing with death is what we call our bereavement travel service. We have a national travel company that's associated with our company that when the family needs to get families from another country, another state, this service provides that family the ability to contact them, make flight arrangements, make car arrangements, make hotel arrangements at a discounted price, spur of the moment. That's a service that we provide. And if anybody's ever had to fly somewhere on a quick to go to a funeral or have a family come in, you know what, you get charged. So again, that's one. On the pre-need side, there's the 100% transferability benefit, like I discussed. It moves with you wherever you go. Okay. Then there's what we call, and this is a big one. It's called the family protection benefit. And what it is anybody that has a pre-arrangement service with us, who's arranged for their own pre-arrangement, we have a benefit where if they have any children or grandchildren, 21 years of age or under, God forbid something happens to the child or the grandchild, we're going to provide a free service for that child or grandchild, up to the level of the person that has the pre-arrangement. And unfortunately, over my career, I've had to use that benefit with families where, you know, a son or daughter was lost in a car accident, a grandchild died as a baby, or something like that. So it's that. And the last thing is, what am I forgetting, Dwight? Family protection benefit. At our cemeteries, for people that are 65 and under, if they die if they're paying for their contract in an installment basis, $5,000 of the balance is waived if they die. Okay, so those are some distinctive things that set us apart from our really good competitors. Okay, now let's just talk a little bit about things. And I've heard a lot of people today talk about having that conversation. We call it have the conversation, okay? And we have some resources for that to help families. We have a personal planning guide, and anybody wants one, we'll get you one. Just sign up for it back there. This personal planning guide, which covers all the stuff that you need and information that you have, is available to you. Our company spent over $250,000 developing this booklet, and we give it away. And it's got all the vital information that we need to put on a death certificate. It's got information that you need to provide guidance and a blueprint to your family for what you want done, okay? It's got information there where you can list all your financial stuff, your bank accounts, your stock and bonds, your insurance policies, all of that stuff. It's got a place in there where you can list your military service record and other things, where your will is, who's the executive of your will. It's got everything from soup to nuts to provide that blueprint. We give it away free, okay? It's even got a page in there for social media. Now, I mean, this book is constantly evolving, but if you got a Facebook, an Instagram account, or LinkedIn, or any of that junk, which I have, something happens to you and you don't have someone that has the power after you're gone to get in there, that's going to be on there forever, and till the end of time. So anyway, so good planning stuff. Okay. Basically, the decision most people have, and again, you have the conversation, is do I want to have a traditional burial or do I want to be cremated? Okay? There's really no in between there, all right? There's a lot of options for traditional burial. There's natural burial. There's services in churches and chapels, in a park, military services. So that's one side of it, okay? And then burial, if you're a veteran, you can be buried in a national cemetery. If you choose to be buried in another cemetery, it could be a public cemetery, it can be a church cemetery, it can be one of our cemeteries, it can be any cemetery that you want, okay? And there's little pieces that go along with all of that. On your funeral side, you have, or cremation side for that matter, you have services and you have merchandise. Those are two things that you pay for, okay? You have what's called cash advances. Those are things that the funeral home or crematory service advances. It's a pass-through cost. Things like death certificate copies from the state, things like motorcycle escorts, things like musicians, things of that nature. Outside people or outside services that come in, that's a cash advance. Okay? Everything that you list on a prearrangement, whether it be a funeral or a cremation prearrangement, if it's on what we call Section 1, those costs are guaranteed forever. They'll never go up. What you pay for today for that service never ever will go up. Okay? That's one of the things that I had a real grind with Dave Ramsey and Mr. Clark Howard. Okay? Because they didn't understand that. And I said, wait a minute, let me show you. So anyway, on the cremation side, there's a lot more options than most people realize. Because a lot of people nowadays are being cremated. It's rapidly becoming the most common way, okay? But what a lot of people don't know is what can be done with the ashes, all right? Some families take them home. That's okay, but here's what I have found that's happened over the years that I've been doing this. Mom keeps dad ashes, mom passes away, and now the kids have mom and dad's ashes. And then mom and dad pass away, so now the grandchildren have mom and dad's and grandma and grandpa's. And then all of a sudden, over generational, everybody fades out, and now there's ashes there. And I had a story once where I actually picked up some cremated remains, some ashes, in the evidence room at Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office because they were abandoned in a house when someone left. So, I don't know. I don't think that's the way to be. So, again, that's part of the thinking process that we try to cover with folks. All right? It's not just today, it's in the future, and it's after you're gone. Okay. So, but there's cremation options. They can be scattered. They can be placed in cemeteries. They can be placed in the National Cemetery if you're a veteran. You can be shot into outer space. True, that's true. We do it. Okay. They can take your cremated ashes and make Neptune's wreath, part of Neptune's wreath down in Florida if you want to be around the fish and all of that. So there's a huge amount of options. So, what I always tell folks is sit with an advisor, get all your options. Don't worry about asking crazy questions because there's stuff that we do now. If it's moral and legal and ethical and that's what you want, we will do it. We have the capacity to do it, okay? Now let's talk about a little bit about funding, pre-funding, okay? Like I mentioned, if people take that initiative and fund their arrangements ahead of time, which we always recommend because it locks the cost and sometimes doesn't create a financial stress hassle down the road if the family's not prepared financially to do it, which many are. Prolonged illness or a prolonged stay in a convalescent facility can exhaust people's resources that once had enough money but die without enough money, okay? So the money is very, very safe. It's either, we're regulated by state law, by federal law, and being that we're as large as we are, and the ones with the deep pockets, we're watched to make sure that we're doing everything right. Okay? But there's two ways that we fund prearrangements, whether it be cremation or funeral. One is with a insurance trust, and the other one is with a regular trust. Okay? Both guarantee the costs, both can be paid at one time, or both can be made with payments. In the insured funded prearrangement, the benefit to that is that if a person dies before they complete their payments, the family doesn't have to write a check to pay it off the insurance company. So that burden goes on their shoulder rather than the family's. In the trust, it goes into a regulated trust. It's not in any junk bonds or anything like that. These are all regulated by the state. They're all regulated by the federal government. So, and whether it be one of our funeral homes or any other funeral home, make sure you check those things. Okay? A red flag is if you're writing a check for a prearrangement to the funeral home itself. That's a red flag. If you've got proof from them and contractually that they're going over with you that that's going into a trust, that's fine. And you should have them provide proof to you that it has gone in the trust. Because when there's been fraud in the past when it comes to funding, pre-need funeral funding, it's because the family gave the check to Joe's funeral home, and Joe's funeral home put it in their operating account and didn't. Might have had a file, but they spent the money. You got to be careful. What's that? Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. You write a check, but most of the time, with us, you're writing a check to an insurance trustee. Okay, and the reason why we use that is because it's simple, and it's safe, and it also every insurance company that operates in the state of Georgia or most other states for that matter has a guarantee fund that you're registered in that. The insurance companies have to be part of it in order to do business in the state. And that guarantee, it's like the FDIC, only it's for insurance companies. If you have annuity money or life insurance funding, stuff like that, that's protection. Yes, it's being funded, and again, it depends on two things. One is if a person is imminently ill, terminally ill, where we expect death within 6 months, we're going to use a trust. Okay, if they're not imminently ill, and we usually use an insurance provider for a couple of reasons. One is that there's safety in it because we have the government safeguards. And it's completely transportable too. Initial payment goes to the insurance company. Yes, right, because you will be provided a contract, and that's another thing to look out for if you're making prearrangements. We're required by the Federal Trade Commission, when we start having a discussion with anybody regarding if there's a death or if there's a prearrangement situation, the moment we start talking about funeral costs and cremation costs, we got to provide you what we call a general price list. That's a federal law. If you go into a cemetery, if you go into a funeral home, whether it be a prearrangement or you're taking care of a loved one's arrangements, and you're not given that right up front, watch out. Because that's where games can happen, okay? If I don't do that, if I come to your home tonight and I want to talk to you and your wife or you and your partner or whoever it is about prearrangements, and I don't bring that federal general price list out right in the front of our conversation, I will be fined $15,000 if I'm caught. That's how serious it is. And funeral homes still have have that exact same responsibility. So there's a lot involved, and so if there's anything that everybody takes out of this, is that every single person in this room has a different arrangement. All right? It's not what we want as funeral providers. It's what we can accommodate what the family wants. Okay? There's nothing out of bounds unless I said it's a moral, legal, or ethical. Okay? So, just a second. We'll be available to you. There's a sign-up list. And listen, let me tell you how easy this is. All right? There's no cost for information. But what we do is provide people information based on their individual needs and wants. And that's always going to be a private conversation between you and us. That's not going to be done in an open forum. Okay? Secondly, we can meet you personally in our office, and now we have 20-something offices throughout the Atlanta area. So a lot of times people that attend a church may not live in our local area. They may live across town because they moved across town. We can still take care of them, okay? But we can do it in person in our office. We can do it in your home. If you can get on a computer screen, we can do a webinar with you. We can call you on the phone and we'll talk a little bit about what you want, what you need, and what you would like information on. We'll provide that to you and follow up on it, or you can call us and ask questions. So it's really easy. Okay, it is. Don't be afraid of it. This is actually a pretty simple process. It really is. People don't like to talk about it, but I've been doing it over 45 years, and I told you my conviction. I've never had a family come into my arrangement office and say, Kelly, I wish Mom and Dad didn't do that with you all those years ago, because we were really looking forward to making their funeral arrangements. We were looking forward to that event, looking forward to that process. But I can't tell you the amount of people that have come up to me afterwards and hugged me and kissed me, and especially wives, and now it's more husbands sometimes. Tell me, thanks, give me a hug. Thanks for hanging in with that old codger, because I wanted this done and he didn't want to do it. Thanks for hanging in, because it made it so much easier for me and the kids. That's the thanks I get. I mean, that's, you can't put a price on it. That's all I got. Yeah, questions? Well, an at-need process is only going to be handled by a licensed funeral director. Okay, a pre-need consultant who may have credentials and a license to sell pre-need and all that, they can't assist you at an at-need. We can assist you up to you taking your last breath, but beyond that, it's the funeral director. And again, it's doing your due diligence, making sure that the firm has got licensed funeral directors, because believe it or not, there's firms out there where families are met by non-funeral directors. You gotta check. Okay. But the process is, when the family calls us, we take the person into our care immediately. We'll ask the family what kind of services. Basically, is it going to be a traditional burial? Is it going to be cremated? Because we want to know whether or not we're going to have permission to embalm the person, because embalming is not required by law in the state of Georgia. And we only, as a company, require it if there's going to be public services and viewing. Okay? But we do allow private family, close family, immediate family, and anybody they select up to, like, it's usually about 5, 6, 7 people, where they can view the person. We'll prepare that person and make them look dignified without being embalmed. Okay? So that, but we'll get that, and then the family will come in. We'll set up all the arrangements with them. Whatever cemetery, if it's a cemetery situation, they'll be advised. And, Floral Hills, we have a cemetery and funeral home at the same place. So we offer cremation, funeral, and cemetery at the same place. A lot of our locations around North America, but we have standards. Okay. So, and then if it's a cemetery getting involved, then the cemetery family service advisor works jointly as a team with the funeral director. And we do the same thing even if it's not one of our funeral homes. We work with, whether it be in our area, Bill Head, or whether it be A.S. Turner or Wages, any of those. We provide services as partners to all the. So, anyway. That's all I got. You're welcome. We got packets for everybody.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Appreciate that information. And then do remember to go if there's something else that you did not pick up on our information table there and get those resources for you. Okay? Well, I just want to say thank you for all of you all for being here and your interest in this topic. Thanks to all of our speakers as well. Wonderful, a lot of variety, I feel. Hopefully it gave you some things to get those conversations going and some of the planning. And then just an ending here today too, our health and welfare team thanks you. Are those of you that are on the health and welfare team, would you mind standing up for me just real quick? Thank you. Yes, Robert is our newest member as well. And then thank you for all of the volunteers that helped today also, or that brought food, etc. Thank you, Carter, back there for your AV expertise as well. And in ending, I just wanted to, I want you to go out and let some other people know about this information. Maybe they were not able to come today. Maybe you've got some information that will be helpful to them as well, or make those connections with people that they might need if they have the need for these services as well. So as part of our Harmony Grove mission statement that we have, we ask God to empower us to go into our community so that we might connect with your kingdom in ways that encourage us to grow as being disciples. And so if you will take this information out and share it with others, we would appreciate that. Thank you very much. Feel free to get you a little snack on the way out, okay? Hang out and meet and network with some of these people here if you've got more questions for them or have more ways you'd like to talk to them about your needs.